Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna go camera off as well here. I feel like it'd be weird just talking to myself. All right, everybody. Five features here. Welcome back. We got another episode. We got, my man Curry Hicks Sage. Great follow on Twitter. Great podcast going right now. Just dropped a new episode with some talking some buckyball. And I think I found you like a couple years back when I started getting into A10 Twitter as a St. Joe's guy, and you were on these UMass Spaces. Like, this is when Spaces might have first came out, and I would like pop in just randomly, and I hear this like savant like maniac talking about like UMass and A10 at like a really like, profound level. And I was just like, what the hell am I doing here? But then like you started the search season stuff that really blew up. And then today, when we're recording this today, I saw that the A&M account actually tweeted out your interview with Bucky. So is that like a sort of like almost like a weird stamp of approval here for you, like a jumping off moment, for
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know me, I did kind of just start as a, oh, excuse me, that's an alarm reminding me to do your show. Um, I did start as just kind of a UMass. Um, I grew up next to UMass, didn't go there when Calipari was there. And so I'd had this count forever. I had a UMass basketball podcast, and it did kind of start as that. And then, um, can you hear me, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, cool. And then in time, what happened was I started chronicling UMass's search for a new coach in 2022. And I realized that most of the people listening were not necessarily UMass fans, but just people kind of tracking the national coaching carousel. And I always had some people I knew in college basketball and enough sources to kind of fake my way through it. But then through that, kind of lots of people started hitting me up. And then the next year, I started doing search season for the whole country. And then the next year, and the next year, we got sponsors and we grew, and more people followed. And then I kind of started this business slash kind of like consultancy where I'm helping, where I'm interviewing coaches like, 2 hours at a time during
Yeah.
the off season, called Burning Sage. And you can check it out at Curry Hicks Sage. Is it curryhicksage.com? Yeah, curryhicksage.com. And they're really good. I'm not gonna lie. Like, they're good shows, they're long form interviews. And so to your point, I joked when I started, I was like, this is my foray into legitimacy, but that's kind of actually exactly what's happened, because I think once people actually listen to me interview people, they're like, oh, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, and these are pretty entertaining. So it's been a long process to get to a point where I felt even comfortable ever asking anyone for money to listen, but I put a lot of work into it, so it's been fun. And
Yeah.
yes, the Texas A&M AD retweeted it, and the A&M account tweeted it. So did the USC account when we had Musselman on. So I think we're getting, and Steve Forbes at Wake tweeted
Yeah.
it. So we're getting into the legitimate realm, I suppose.
Yeah, it seems like you have this infatuation with kind of like bizarre guys. Not necessarily bizarre guys, but guys that are doing things differently than the average stock.
Yeah, I take probably a bit too much pride in finding the next like obscure or good one. And now the challenge is like I got to find it the next batch, because all the guys I started talking about in 22, 23, when they were like D2 coaches, like Ben McCollum, who we had on the show, he's
Yeah.
now at Iowa. So guys who were D2 coaches when I started talking about them are now Big Ten coaches. And so I've got to find the next batch.
Yeah. Can you explain to people more about like search committees and firms? Like I have a picture of like Don Draper in a suit, like unveiling the new George Mason logo or something. Like what are those like? What do those like search committees actually do? And like what do they
Yeah, I
how do
mean,
they operate?
a search firm really, like, when you get right down to it, and I do believe at this point I could do, and frankly, I'm sort of now quietly helping a couple of smaller places. Like, I just was like, I'll help you with this, and pitch myself for a couple places. So,
Oh, sweet.
full disclosure, this is not a fully journalistic outfit here. But a search firm fundamentally is just a corporate headhunter that does it for, in this case, for college basketball, right? And most of the major search firms, there is a bit of a cartel. They have a pretty four or five, six of them, a couple outsiders to get one or two here and there, but they're basically just headhunters who help athletic directors make hires. And they're the same people are doing this, by the way, for in many cases for the uh deputy CFO of the Anaheim Angels, or the
Yeah.
chief marketing officer of the Baltimore Orioles, whatever, like. So there are kind of specialists who own certain college stuff. There's a few in particular, and you can look at these as, there's the sinister way to look at them, and the kind of straightforward way. The straightforward way is just, a lot of athletic directors are, they might have been a soccer coach or a compliance officer or whatever, and so they don't necessarily, and they've got a lot to do, so they're not thinking deeply about the college basketball landscape and who they should hire, and so they turn to someone who has good relationships with the agents who kind of run the scene, and as well as, with some coaches and trusted people around the industry who give them a sense of like who would be a good fit.
Yeah.
The more sinister way to look at it, and I think both of these can be true depending on the situation, because every case is a little bit specific, or a little bit unique, I should say. The more sinister way is that these people harbor the relationships with ADs in part, and ADs hire them in part to help themselves down the line as well, right? So if you hire a search firm for a few weeks for, between 50 and $125,000, and and then you hire a basketball coach with them, and then you get fired as an AD 5 years from now, these search firms aren't, generally speaking, aren't so massive that they will forget that, you kicked them six figures for a few weeks work, and they may help land you a deputy
Mm.
fundraiser role at, the school that will take you after you flamed out because you made a bad hire at an A10 school or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
this is not totally this is not terribly distinct from what exists in a range of professional services industries, from finance to, you know, uh, computer science or
I like the
whatever,
way you said finance.
finance. I said
That
finance,
was distinguished.
corporate finance.
What's something, I guess, like you said, I get that aspect of it being, relatively similar to the corporate world, but is there anything that you found along the way that would maybe shock a fan about the business of college basketball?
Well, I mean, the business of college basketball or the business of searches?
The business of, yeah, coaching, and just anyone in your circles that you've spoken to, and kind of something
I'll
that
tell
jumped off the
you.
page.
I'll tell you. This has me a little hot under the collar, a little, and I should note that the deeper you get into this, it's like the more I find myself falling prey to the same things I used to kind of criticize or indict. Like, so some of
Right.
it's not, and it's just some of it's just the deeper you go on any topic, the more people you get to know, and in the world and in the space, and
Sure.
so you realize like, oh, there's like assholes, and then there's awesome people, like every other industry on the planet, right?
Right.
And I think as a fan, you kind of come into it being like, all these people are just like shitheads and greedy, and looking out for their boys, and like there's certain truth in that, but it's not terribly different than anything else. The only difference is that as someone who did come to it from kind of a fandom angle, you want to believe that your school will sort of do what's in the best interest of its fan base, and that, unfortunately, is just not true
Mm.
unless the fan base itself is loud, engaged, informed, thoughtful, and actively pressuring their athletic director to look out for the fans, right? Because
Yeah.
so it's a little uncomfortable, because you kind of sound like, you end up sounding like a little bit of a freak, but it's like, don't ever defer to these people. They work for you. Your athletic director works for you.
Mm.
And yes, some of them are terrific, some of them are not. And you may not know shit. So like, be mindful of what you don't know also, but don't reflexively assume that just because they work for your school, they're looking out for the school's best. Like, they're looking out for themselves like anyone else is in their own professional life, and it's up to you to sort of hold them to account to a certain extent. But to answer your question, tangent aside, about what would surprise you, I mean, and if certain people listen to this, they could sort of put two and two together. So
Yeah.
I got to be careful what I say, but there are certain agents who very brazenly, or I should say, there are certain agents who very brazenly um, funnel information suppose to reporters,
Hmm.
and sort of and reporters launder their reputations on this, like
Rumors.
and they're not objective, right? And so once you've gone like so down the rabbit hole and you kind of know how all this works, you can very, very easily um
See a pattern.
see a pattern. Sorry, I just got a text message and it's like you don't know if it's junk or not. It's like one of those, I'm heading your way soon for a work trip. Let's plan a little meetup if you're free. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's fake, but I kind of want to know. Um yeah, so that, and I think one of the reasons that gets me a little irritated is because I've never professed to be objective. Even when I do the search season show, I'll always come out and say, hey, I'm going to mention five names. One of these five I do have some personal relationship with, or know, or have heard, good things about from people I trust. The others, I'm just kind of like, and I don't tell the listener who that is, right? But at least I try to maintain a level of transparency. And I'm a burner account ultimately, right? I mean, plenty of
Yeah.
people know who I am. It's not that secretive anymore, um, but it's maddening to see some of the reporters in the space who kind of play that like, oh, I'm this objective, like Woodward and Bernstein type who's just trying to get the truth. And you're like, no, you're not. You're blatantly best friends with that agent. And every time you get a scoop, good night, honey, love you. My wife just came in and said good night.
Yeah.
Um, and every time you get a scoop, it's like that's a scoop because and that's, you're getting that because you're boys with that guy, right? And
Right.
like
Right.
that's fine. That's fine. But then
Yeah.
I also like to get a lot of scoops. I had to like, I also, there's a little bit of like I had to work 10 times harder to a certain extent, right? Because I had to like find the, administrative assistant in the office whose husband, would leak me you know what I mean? Like I had to go so hard.
So
And
rogue.
it's like these agents are just, and then in turn, right, those people, those reporters and whatnot do favors for agents. But from,
Sure is.
you know, from a search firm perspective, I mean, I kind of explained it earlier, but it's really like that can be mitigated if fan bases are more engaged in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good place to kind of kick off. I want to get into some of the big five stuff. This is a big five podcast. And I think, I guess we started St. Joe's. That's a place that people are really seeming to voice their opinions about
Yeah, they've
almost.
never been shy.
No, no, no. There's a really larger than life personality there. But you know, I asked you if Billy Lang's seat is hot, but at this point, I don't know how you can continue to even ask a question like that. There doesn't seem to be any pressure internally for or
No, I
anything.
think it's pretty hot at this point.
Yeah, you think so?
I mean, again, like
Is
he
that
just kind of does it just enough at the last second every year to just kind of like justify another year. And eventually he'll either have a big winning year and try to get out of there, or he'll just totally flop and he'll get canned. But in the NIL era, where they appear to have committed a reasonable amount of, a legitimate amount of resources,
hmm,
it's like, you know, um, it's like he gets to where he's got to get, and apparently they've I haven't looked at them as much this year, but they've kind of reloaded again, right?
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's really a question of like, is it ever going to be better than like this past season as far as talent? And I'm not sure that
I
you
can't
can.
imagine it will.
Yeah, and so we couldn't really get it done this year. Then it's kind of a matter of like, I mean, these guys might be good. They might turn out to be not great. Just I don't know.
They
It's
made the
just,
NIT last year.
oh yeah, they made it both last 2 years, I think, and then
I didn't realize they made it both. Yeah, I mean, so like,
NIT is
and like
not
in
even what it
this,
was before, though, I guess.
and one, wait, say that again.
NIT is like not even really what it was before at this point either.
It's
So
not, but the thing is, the A10 isn't either,
yeah,
insofar as it's been a one two bid league recently. It was one bid the last 2 years, right?
last year it was Duquesne. It was a Duquesne and
Oh no, Duquesne got in and somebody else got in.
VCU.
So
Yeah.
But the point is,
Yeah,
because it's gotten fewer bids, I think that gives guys like Lang, to some extent, justifiably, a little more wiggle room to be like, look, I got to the NIT in a league that only one team's getting to the tournament in, right? So but it's still St. Joe's. And at a certain point, it's like, it's not like he was close any of these years, you know?
yeah, yep.
So he's on the hot seat. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what
he's
happens.
on the
But
hot seat. He's sort of perennially on the hot seat until he gets to a tournament, or yeah, yeah.
I think to jump to LaSalle, I've talked about St. Joe so much on the show, so I don't even really need to get so LaSalle. So Darius Nichols, a former head coach at Radford, a school like LaSalle, they struggle with the resources. They don't have obviously the money that the other Big Five schools or the A10 schools do. They're kind of a perennial bottom feeder. Is this guy about as much of a home run as you can get after Dunphy kind of served his transitional figurehead role?
Yeah, I mean, so here's the deal. My understanding of LaSalle institutionally right now is that it's in a tricky spot. I know they have the new arena, which is great,
Yeah.
but there is just not a lot of money there. And my understanding was, I think he took a little less or considerably less, with the understanding that some would either go to his staff or NIL. I can't remember which,
Mm,
probably both. The reality is, like, it it has become, I think, at this point, so clearly the worst job in the Atlantic 10. And I say that as someone who thinks Nichols did a really nice job at Radford. I thought it was a good, thoughtful, kind of slightly outside the box hire, in that I don't think he'd made a tournament there. Maybe he'd made one, but it was like, it was smart. He's young, he's going to run around, he's going to get some players, he's going to get some bounce back kids. Like, he's very well liked among, some people in the college basketball coaching landscape. He's worked with Mike White, Dusty May, like, people really vouch for him. And uh, I think it was a good hire given the constraints, right? But
mm,
the constraints are really considerable. And you just look at, like, what he has to work with and what Billy Lang has to work with from a resources perspective. And despite them both being small Catholic schools in Philadelphia, it's apples and oranges. Just you're
mm,
just dealing with totally different universes almost, now that we're in the NIL era.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's a tough job. I don't know much about him. I didn't really watch much Radford, but did they have a successful season last year? I assume they must have, right?
I think they were like probably 21 and 12, something like that. Let's see. I'll
What do you
look.
think of this new trend where like these teams are all playing these D2 teams and the non-con and stuff? I mean, just kind of gaming the system at this
Who
point.
who is this that we're talking about
I'm talking
specifically?
about A10, and like, a lot of A10 teams have announced. So I think like Fordham was getting dragged through the coals the other day because they had like one of the worst non-cons of all time. I
Yeah,
think they
yeah.
played my high school. They played my high school or
I
something.
mean, it sucks for the A10 because, like, what's going to happen to those teams' strength of schedule, and then invariably one of them will upset a Dayton
Oh
or
yeah,
St.
yeah.
Louis or whatever. So, not great from that perspective. But I mean, I think this is the challenge for Fordham. You mentioned Fordham and
They're in a
LaSalle, who I
similar
think
spot.
are kind of a far, far off from the rest of the league. Everybody
Yeah,
else is sort of, like, it sounds like, found some money. Bonaventure always struggles to find money, but they have
the Woj
Woj
effect.
and people really giving a shit, and they're getting creative internationally, and they're doing some things.
Hmm.
And they have just that rabid fan base, and it's a tough place to play, so you can offset some of the institutional barriers. But
Yep.
uh sorry, what was the question I got? Oh, so I guess I don't mind, because, like, those teams are going to get rinsed in the league, more than likely.
Hmm.
And if that gives them a little more confidence coming out of the gate, I mean, I know LaSalle's playing at Michigan, so at least they have
Yeah.
that. I haven't seen their schedule, but I get the frustrations. But if you're them and you're about to go into an A10 where, under rev share, these places that don't have football are really starting to spend real money. I mean, Steph Curry's super involved with the Davidson NIL program, and Mason's finally putting some real money into it. Obviously, VCU, St. Louis, Dayton, they're putting real money into it. Like, I kind of just am like, yeah, if Fordham wants to go play a couple of D2s and a bunch of like really, really low bottom of the barrel D1s to start the year and try to get, 10,
20.
11 wins on the board. I can't really fault them.
Yeah. Like I said, I assume, the most that you've talked about people from as far as Big Five would probably be like Nova, just because that was a huge story this year. There was like weirdly a decent amount of controversy, I guess, with Kevin Willard coming off a great resurgence here at Maryland. Now Buzz Williams takes the reins there. Kind of intertwined with your interview that dropped today, I guess, a little bit somehow, a little inception. But Neptune now fittingly joining Michael Jordan in the Hornets staff. So Nova's been a school that's always done it like the Nova way, right? The higher inside, higher the J guys. Um, what do you think could sort of come of this new marriage between a guy like Willard and Nova?
I think it's a good hire, especially given Nova's like an interesting place. And this was an interesting cycle because there's just not a lot of guys out there between the ages of kind of 40 and 52 who are proven and have won at a pretty high level and that you kind of know are like relatively sure things from just like a basic competence standpoint. Um
Hmm.
or I should say there's a bunch of them, but there's no like the great ones aren't like if you think of that next generation of coaches, beneath the kind of Izzos and Patinos
Yeah,
and those guys,
Oates.
you've got like Nate Oates, Danny Hurley, Scott Drew, you know, those guys are mostly pretty set. I mean, all three of those guys have made Final Fours or won national titles, so they don't really need to go anywhere, And
Mhm.
Nova isn't if they are going to go somewhere, they can get Duke, Kentucky, Kansas,
Yeah.
whatever when they open, if that's what they want to
Yep.
do. So Nova was just in that kind of spot where it's like, yeah, we're a fringe top 10, top 15, certainly top 20 type of program, but we're not a top 3 to 5 program, so we can't just go out and demand anyone. And so Willard, with his Big East experience and coming off the Sweet 16 and knowing the region and kind of being a steady Eddie, competent dude who's not gonna like mess with the institutional balance of the place kind of culturally. He's been in the Big East. Like it just makes sense. And it's like a solid B plus higher. But at the same time, I'm not like, wow, they just took the ceiling back to like, national title contender every year status.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you think of his transparency, I guess, throughout the process? Whereas as opposed to guys like Cooley who've been, killed online for tons of stuff, but I guess the way he said, always be at Providence, all this kind of stuff. I guess you have a weird vantage point here about like how you're actually supposed to handle like a transition while you're actually playing. Like, how do you think like you should handle that?
I'm trying to get him on my show and I don't know that'll do it, but I think now he's kind of talked about it in a fair like at the time I was like, what is he doing? And
Yeah.
now with the benefit of hindsight, and this is generally the case, I think search season is like the fog of war. Just crazy shit goes down and like it's not rational. These things happen under like super quick timelines. In his case, his AD left
Yeah.
minutes before basically or like a day before his NCAA tournament game with a 4 seed and a really good team. And there was some sense that he may have even only mentioned Nova initially as like a just get a little more money at Maryland, and then it was like, oops. And I'll tell you, like I can't get into sources, but I'll just tell
Yeah.
you, I have in the off season now spoken to some people who are as close to that search as there ever will be to
Yeah.
any search. Let's just say that,
Mm.
okay? And I think that some weird things happened there that I kind of now empathize a little bit more with Willard than I did. I understand Maryland fans who don't, and at the time I was super critical of him. He didn't handle it right because what are you going to say when your team is still playing, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't be like, yeah, I'm out the second we lose, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But
that's what I was gonna say.
he kind of like got himself in a jam, and then he had nobody to negotiate with on the Maryland side because his AD left, and there was a lot of uncertainty around who was calling the shots at Maryland in that interim period, right? And Maryland is kind of a like it's a bit of a chaotic state system. You have the president, he's not like super involved in sports, but reportedly the number 2 in under the Maryland AD was not someone that Willard was liked at all. So it was like just really, really fraught. He didn't handle it well in those press conferences, but in retrospect, I'm not sure what else he could have done. And it's like water under the bridge now. He'll go
Yeah.
back. If he ever plays him again, he'll get booed lustily and life moves on.
Yeah, yeah, I'm thinking there'll be like term papers written about how you're supposed to handle that from a PR perspective. I don't really understand it.
Yeah, and at the time I had it all. It's like the funny thing about it is, like I said, in the moment, it was like, damn, he really fucked that up. And now it's like, he could have said some things differently. He was probably gonna leave. So, you know,
Yeah. And this could
yeah.
become more common, I think, as well as this kind of stuff. Um, so I guess another place that is kind of similar to LaSalle, I guess, as far as like institutional challenges would be Temple. Temple's almost akin to a UMass, where of yesteryear they have a lot of great coaches that have been through Temple, a lot of great players, great success. I think they have awesome tournament appearances and everything like that. And then you got Fisher who comes in and looks very promising. Looks like he's doing things the right way. Guys buy in. Looks like he's got some momentum building. There's always also this weird like betting allegation going on with Temple, which I don't think anyone really ever knows what happened there.
Yeah,
Uh,
apparently more is coming out on that fairly soon. Not on necessarily on that, but on some gambling case. I keep hearing that it's like gonna pop soon.
okay, yeah, because that it kind of popped up and then it seems like it just went away. Nothing really happened. But they caught fire in the American tourney, and they almost won the whole thing. But from everything that you've heard or seen or talked to people, is Temple seems like a tough a place to win as there is nowadays.
Is it seen as a tough place to win?
Yeah,
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 definitely.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
and,
And just
and
because of
and
those
like
institutional buy-in kind of stuff and all like the problems that the actual school has itself, I guess.
I
And
mean, with no disrespect to Fisher, because I know people who really like him. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I've heard pretty good things. What was he, a Penn State assistant at the time?
yeah,
I mean, the notion of Penn State hiring a first, sorry, of Temple, like of when I was growing up, and I know it's been a while, but in the late '90s or even
into the thousands.
well into the Dunphy
Yeah.
era, the notion of Temple being a place that would hire like a 39-year-old first-time head coach
Mm.
is just you wouldn't believe it if I told you that 10
Yeah.
years ago even, right? And so and you there's sort of reports that Matt Langle was kind of like, nah, I'm not even taking that, who's a
But
Philly
Matt Langle,
guy.
if you mention Matt Langle on this podcast, you get 20 St. Joe's fans got lining up for him.
Well, he should have a Philly job at this point. It's pretty
Yeah.
absurd. I mean, and he certainly would be the leader, I think, for St. Joseph. I always joke that, when they hired Billy
Yeah.
Lang, they just forgot the L. They sent the note to, the invitation to the wrong email address because um and so maybe it's like Bill Langle or Bill Lang, and it's like they forgot the L at the end of the Bills was actually supposed to be on Matt Langle. Um, so I mean, but I think like, you know, um, I think like Langle didn't even want Temple, I think. Like, I
Mm.
think it was or they were kinda they made him maybe jump through hoops to get it, and he was like it was kinda like "Alright, if you want Matt Langle, like, you're lucky to get him," kinda thing, and he
Yeah.
has a really nice situation at Colgate, and, like,
Yep.
it's like if but still, you shouldn't be staying in the Patriot League if Temple's even remotely a decent job, so I don't quite know about all of the institutional disarray that's gone on there, but I've heard just nothing but bad things in the last, maybe it's stabilized a little bit in the last year because it seems
Yeah.
like Casey Keeler is there now for football. That was a pretty impressive hire.
Yeah.
So maybe they're figuring it out now with rev share or whatever. But I mean, I've just heard safety on campus, a million things. You just hear like I don't hear
Yeah.
anything good about Temple
Yeah.
as
It
a
seems
yeah.
the common take is that kind of they put all their eggs in the football basket and then it kind of didn't work out.
As a
But
UMass fan, I know that I know that story all too well.
oh yeah. Last one here. We go with Penn. Weird situation as well. We got Donahue now on the St. Joe's bench as an assistant. And McAfee, which I never would have guessed that. I don't know. That kind of came from. I know he has like some ties to Penn. I think he went to Wharton, right? That's a pretty.
Who's that? Fran McCaffrey?
Yeah, yeah.
I
That's
know he went to Penn in the 70s. I don't know what school there he was at, but yeah.
so. Do you have any insight into what kind of went wrong at Iowa? Just kind of parted ways, kind of see.
Yeah, I mean, just time, it was time. He and
Yeah.
Iowa had a really shitty NIL situation too. So McCaffrey like did a pretty good job there considering the resources in this like new era. And he just never, even when he had those great teams, they couldn't get out of the first or second round, I feel like. So, they were ready to move on. And he's a Penn alum who Penn hired. Fran McCaffrey's a very good coach. Has had a really nice career at Siena and Iowa. But personally, and it's nothing to do with Fran McCaffrey, I was disappointed in that hire as sort of a fan of the search process and
Mm,
the way in which the search process at its best can elevate new people and exciting new names. Penn is such a great job in so many ways, and it's such a great launching pad for it can be such a great launching pad for the right guy. I mean, you look at Fran Dunphy, um, and so it was just kind of a bummer to me to give that to a guy coming out of the Big Ten who was probably making $3 million, $2, $3 million a year, whatever it was, who's in his is probably in his late 60s, probably close to 70.
mm,
There's just something really uninspiring about that. It has nothing to do with Fran McCaffrey. I think he can actually win and be pretty successful there.
mm.
But you're like, man, Penn, like just go get the next young guy and give somebody a shot. There's so many great assistants out there who toil in obscurity and work their asses off. And there's so many great um, high academic D3 guys and it just was like to me a very kind of unimaginative hire.
What do you mean by it's a really good job? You just think it's like the familiar resources and just the
I mean,
connections
put
that
it
you
this
make?
way. When I say it's a really good job, there's 362 Division 1 jobs in the country, maybe 360, whatever it is.
Mhm.
In a given year, maybe 60 or 70 open.
Yeah,
Uh a bunch of those are kind of, Ohio Valley, NEC,
yeah,
whatever level places that are just tough no matter what, and that nobody's like leaving a high major anymore as an assistant even to take those, right?
yeah,
And then you have of course like your high majors, many of which are tough because they're just like places like that don't win as much.
yeah,
And so Penn is an Ivy League school in a basketball obsessed town. They've had an unbelievable history in the Ivy League.
yeah.
They play in one of the classic gyms in college basketball.
Mm.
And so yeah, it's not Villanova, but it's a pretty cool gig and there's hundreds and thousands of red-blooded American men who would love nothing more than to be Division 1 basketball coaches. And so to just be like, oh, we're gonna give it to the
Yeah,
7-year-old alum from Iowa, who is a good basketball coach. I want to be clear. Just to me, it's just like, these things are so precious. There's so few of them that you want them to be given to people who've kind of worked their asses off to get a shot.
yeah, I hear you. I like it. Well, Curry, dude, I appreciate you coming on. Check out the Burning Sage podcast. I'm a subscriber. You got some really, really interesting stuff there that goes like really far beyond what the average, media outlet does. I'm excited to see you personally getting a lot more buzz on Twitter and on, the guys buying in as coaches and stuff is really cool to see, man.
Yeah, appreciate that, man. Where's your show? What's the name of your show again?
It's
Sorry.
called Five Features. It's a YouTube-based show. So I'm gonna have to splice some crazy shit into this one, see what happens.
5 features.
Yeah, big five.
Got it. Awesome.
Sweet.